This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I am so excited to have my special guest with you guys, Melissa Miller. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hey, Sarah. I'm good. Good to be here.
Good. Melissa is a caregiver for her spouse. She's also a stay-at-home mom. She's a former CNA, and she's also a mentor for moms in transition. She's also, I would like to call her an advocate, if that's okay, for
Absolutely.
stay-at-home moms and mom caregivers. So, Melissa, would you like to further introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Like Sarah mentioned, I am a former certified nursing assistant. I practiced mainly in long-term care health for 15 years, and I loved it. But I became a stay-at-home mom and spousal caregiver in 2020 when my husband was officially diagnosed with epilepsy.
So, thank you so much. Would you like to tell us about your family and your family story?
Sure. My husband and I have a beautiful daughter. She's just turned 3. Her name is Linda, and she's our miracle after 6 years of infertility. So she was born in January 2019. So she just turned 3 and is a handful, but we love her. And then my husband and I just celebrated 10 years of marriage in November. And we really hadn't, or he really hadn't had any health issues up until December of 2019 when he had his first epilepsy seizure. And we didn't know it was epilepsy right out the gate either. It was just more of his first seizure was just a random pass out episode. And we woke up at 4:30 in the morning to change our daughter's diaper. And he had this weird glazed look over his face. And I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he got 3 words out, "I don't know." And he hit the ground. And initially thinking, we thought, oh, it's just maybe him being tired. Because obviously when you're in your early 50s and raising a daughter from an infant and working 40 plus hours to provide for your family, probably get a little tired. So we thought it was just more thinking with my medical brain that it was maybe just a chemical imbalance, maybe just being too tired, something really small that we could fix with just a medical appointment and a little bit of medication. But we had no idea that it would turn into this whole big journey of dealing with a chronic illness that we'd never expected, because he had no history of epilepsy as a child or family history, which is usually how the 2 ways that it could show up in your life.
Well, thank you so much for that. And unfortunately, a lot of caregivers get thrown in that experience, whether it's a spouse, a child, a parent, a sibling, where they just kind of feel like they get the rug pulled out from underneath them. Like it's sometimes there's warning and sometimes there's not. And I can imagine that being, incredibly traumatic and stressful. How did your background in healthcare help you with, accepting the diagnosis and recognizing what you need to do?
I am so thankful, actually, first and foremost, for my certified nursing assistant training. That's the thing that I really am thankful for more than anything, because I feel like it's definitely given me a leg up in being able to get organized in terms of managing the medical side of my husband's illness, adjusting in terms of going from being a working outside the home mom to a stay-at-home mom. That whole piece has been totally brand new to me, and also building business, of course. But yeah, the medical training really helps in terms of just knowing how to take vitals, just knowing the basics of just all the little things that you don't think of, like, knowing what kind of triage questions to ask, like, are you feeling dizzy? Are you having pain? What does the pain feel like? Just paying a little bit more attention to the normal habits and activities of my spouse, of what would be baseline for him and what is not. and just being able to use that and having that terminal and the medical terminology and being able to understand a little bit more what the doctors are telling us when we're powwowing with our medical team, for lack of a better expression. And in turn, me being able to just be really detailed with my notes, my progress notes, as it were, so I can help the doctor make the best choice moving forward for my husband's treatment. So it definitely is a blessing, but I totally get, though, the vast majority of the population doesn't get that. As you know, with us having a healthcare background, we are blessed to have that medical knowledge, but the vast majority of the population doesn't have that. So for the typical mom, the typical wife, the typical caregiver, they're overwhelmed with all this because they don't understand this. They don't know what a normal blood pressure is. They don't know what a normal heart rate is. They don't know what the what triggers could be for like seizures, for example. I know, speaking for me, even with my 15-year background as a certified nursing assistant, I never had a seizure or epileptic patient in my entire career. So I will say it was still a learning curve for me, Sarah. The first, I'd say 6 months, it was like going back to school. I was just nosediving and trying to educate myself as much as I could about this disease. But what was hard, though, too, in terms of being a caregiver, is obviously you want to have as much information as you can to be able to caregive as well as you can. But with this type of illness in particular, there's still so much that isn't known about it. So trying to educate yourself is good and important, but when you still don't have you have to learn to just kind of go with the ebbs and flows of it in of itself, and just know that there's not really a fix for it either. There's no cure, and treatment is going to just vary from person to person too. It's a very individualistic disease. That was really hard, on top of just adjusting to being a stay-at-home mom and adjusting to, like you say, having the rug pulled out from underneath you.
And that's again, something that I think so many families can relate to. Maybe not necessarily the epileptic aspect of it, but the whole, it was just sudden, and I have to adjust. And I personally, being a former CNA, I actually think everybody should have some type of CNA training, or some type of, not as a permanent career, because definitely not for everybody, but I think everyone should kind of have your basic first aid training, at the very least, your basic CPR, and just maybe just a little bit more than that with basic medical training, a good
Mm-hmm.
health class. I think all college, in higher education and I know high school it's in curriculum, but I think in higher education, health, like taking a health science class should be kind of a requirement. Would you kind of agree with that statement?
I think I would, because think about it. The basics of what to do. I mean, it's just so important. You just never know when it's going to hit. And even just going back to the basics of just taking care of your body, self-care, that's a huge one across the board. Just really teaching and honing in on what are the red flags for burning out and health issues. Because what's the bad thing that we do as moms? Not just speaking to moms and caregivers specifically, we burn out because we put everyone first, but we don't take care of ourselves. And just getting back to the basics of making sure we're being hydrated, nutrition, sleep, as crazy as that is, sleep. When was the last time you slept? But anyway, sleep, nutrition, exercise, and then also spiritual, mental, and emotional health, coping strategies. And especially even just think about over the last few years of everything we've gone through with this worldwide pandemic. And then you add on the extra stress of dealing with life still moving forward, but having to adjust to how you navigate life moving forward in a new way, where you don't have as much access maybe to resources as you did before, because everything's tapped out, because more and more people are needing more help, whether it's from federal programs for Medicaid or Social Security disability, or even just being able to get in for your wellness visits because they're so booked up. So yeah, just the basics would probably be a lot better for everybody.
No, I really appreciate that, and you just touched on so many things, that are just things that we advocate for here at Caregiver Chronicles, like more services. Unfortunately, there are lack of resources. This is a national issue, that mental health services, there's a struggle to get mental health services. There's a struggle to get, like you said, disability services. these are all struggles that my family, and not just my family, but every interview I've had that's a recent, that's talking about recent experiences, have talked about the lack of services right now and the struggle to get them. And also, you touched on not just basic needs, not just hydration, but social and emotional, and how that is part of our like basic needs. It's maybe it's like a tier above survival, but it's so important that those cups are filled too. Our spiritual needs, all of those cups need to be filled for us to be a whole person. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just love that you touched on all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But absolutely. Uh, the other piece I will touch on that too, piggybacking off what you just said, the thing that makes me sad is like in terms of mental health, the stigma around it. Using medication, seeing a psychiatrist, a therapist, or a counselor. Tap into those resources. There's no shame in that, because think about it. When the unexpected happens, we're human beings. We have emotions. We have feelings and thoughts, and they have to come to the surface and be released to be able to process. And when we're irritable more than normal, when we're yelling, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we're sad, when we have grief, that's how our body's reacting. Our brain's trying to survive. And if we don't have a healthy coping mechanism to do that, it's going to fall apart. It's like a house of cards, because, as the household leader, when we pick up more of the slack when our spouse gets sick, for example, or our kiddos get sick, and we're also still being a mom and we're still a wife or a partner, we have to take care of ourselves. And if that means, there's only so much support you can get from talking to a family member or a friend or even a spiritual advisor. Sometimes you need to have other coping techniques. So there's no shame in seeing a counselor or a therapist, because I've utilized that in my early 20s. And I was on anxiety and depressive meds at one time in my early 20s. This was well before I was married and all this happened. But still, when I was going through a certain season with health issues that my parents were going through, I needed that. I really needed that. And there's no shame. And, even if it's not medication that you need, therapists and counselors are wonderful, because sometimes you just need a safe place to talk about those situations in a situation, or excuse me, in a setting that's not biased. Family and friends and even your spiritual leaders are going to be a little bit more biased because they're close to you. And as much as we love them and as much as we need them, sometimes that's not what you need. You need a safe place where you can just let crap hit the fan if you need to. You need to be able to shout. You need to be able to swear. I mean, not that I'm saying that's a good thing, but sometimes you just have to do that because you're angry. You're grieving the life that you had expected for your family. That was very much the case for us. Our daughter was only one when my husband started getting sick, and everything got ripped away from, a lot of stuff got ripped away from my husband. He cannot be home alone with our daughter anymore for safety, because we never know when he's going to have an attack. Our daughter can't call 911. Our daughter can't call the doctor. Our daughter can't take detailed notes or administer medication. She could actually ingest it and then get sick herself. So, he can't drive. He's had to pull back on his hours because stress in the stressful environment that he does with his job, it's a trigger. It could actually harm him more than help him. And so then we've had to tap into disability. And that was in and of itself, like you said, like with support, the programs like SSD, food stamps, rental assistance, other types of insurances, those programs vary state to state, and there's rules. So even for example, I'm in the state of Idaho, so the rules that I have had to qualify for to get onto certain programs like that at any given time will obviously look way different than someone who lives in New Jersey. And even with Social Security disability or Social Security supplemental income, there's rules for and criteria for even just being able to qualify those programs. And the stack of paperwork where you're reading it and it looks like German when you're trying to understand it, that's overwhelming. After I filled that out, I never wanted to look at another form for the rest of the year, because I had to do multiple copies, and I had a stack by the time I was done. It was about this thick. It was horrible. It was horrible. So there's just all these things that when we're talking about caregiving, when we're talking about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness, there's so many moving pieces that need to be addressed, and not all the programs and resources that are out there address all those. So that's where I think it's so special, Sarah, that you and I are being able to segue into that. We're being able to say, hey, we've been through this. We don't have all the answers, but by golly, we're going to figure out how to get you some of the answers. And more importantly, we're going to be a safe place and a safe zone for you to come and get these answers addressed and have the support that you need, because that's the whole point my business exists. I want to give people the support I never had. I didn't have a coach or mentor helping me through this. I would have paid money for it. So I'm going to give the next mom, the next caregiver, who's thrust with an unexpected illness or injury in their prime while still raising their family, the chance to have that support, because it's needed. There's not enough of it. And that's not okay. It is so not okay.
Yep. And again, that's why, like, I love your Instagram, and that is a great segue into your business. And I was going to ask you, like, what was your inspiration for, doing this coaching and starting the Instagram? And, I mean, I know the answer because I've been there. It's the same. I know it's a stupid question because.
Oh, it's not a stupid question. There's no stupid questions. The only stupid question is the question you don't ask.
I know the answer because it's the same. It's the same reason I started Caregiver Chronicles. It's because I recognized that nobody was telling my story, that there wasn't enough out there, and I needed to get it out there. It's advocacy, and
absolutely.
So I want you to talk about that.
Okay, you're gonna get your girl fired up here. I haven't had enough coffee. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the whole reason. I will say in the beginning, when I started my first website and first blog back in May of 2020. It was just more out of desperation because it was the only thing on the internet I could find, remote work wise, that I could do from home that would be flexible with my certain situation. Because everything else I was looking at in terms of a job, they wanted a bachelor or master's. I had neither. I just had a healthcare career certification. They wanted X amount of experience. And then they also wanted, a lot of them were actually, even though it was just at the very beginning of the pandemic, they were still going with the idea of like, okay, we're offering remote work now, but you still are going to have to go back on site once the pandemic's over. And I'm like, no, that won't work. Or the other problem I was running into is that like telemarketing, I looked at that, I admit, they wanted you to at your computer answering phone calls, like 8 hours a day, and you had to hit a certain quota. And I'm like, well, if my husband has a seizure and I drop, I'm going to probably get fired because I'm not going to meet my deadlines. And I need to be flexible to take care of my husband. If he passes out, he can't help with our daughter and X, Y, and Z. You know the story. So that's why I decided to go with the blog. I would say I went on this journey between May and December of 2020 and figuring out what I wanted to do. I went through 4 different topics, but in December of 2020, after I talked with my business coach, she was like, you really need to do some research and just hunker down about where you can find your gap in the market. And when I started doing research and I really started to think about, okay, what kind of support am I really needing right now? Because I've been at this for almost a year, dealing with my husband's illness, and I could use some support. And so when I was looking for resources for me, I was like, I can't find anything. It's not really curtailed to this suddenness of having to quit my job, become a stay-at-home mom, dealing with a chronic illness that was unexpected. And the things I could only find was like separate. I needed something together. There was stuff for stay-at-home moms, which is good. I'm not bashing on that. That's needed. I'm glad it's there. There's stuff for chronic illness and epilepsy specifically, or people who are actually going through it. That's good. I'm glad it's there. What about for the caregiver side? The younger caregiver side, someone who's in their 20s or 30s and raising a young family, and or even still have teens at home, but still you're still raising a family. You're still not at that age range in life where you expect to be caring for your spouse full time, right? I couldn't find that. And so that's when it clicked. I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to just share my story, and I'm going to teach other moms how to do it, of how to navigate this transition phase. Now, I didn't necessarily come out and say that I was a coach or mom mentor right out the gate. That came later, I'd say in 2021. But that basically is it in a nutshell. I just decided to share my story, and I wanted to create services and programs and resources for women that are thrust into situations like mine and have nowhere else to go. that they can come to me and they will have the support that I did not have.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And I find that, like you said, there's a lack for that millennial caregiver, like spousal caregiver. I'm fortunate that I don't have to worry too much about spousal caregiving. It's more so with my kids, but there's still that, when, especially when you're sandwiched, when you're in a point of, you have young children and you have a spouse or a grandparent or a parent that you're caring for. There's a lot of times there's not a lot. Millennials aren't necessarily a sandwich generation like prior generations may have been more, raising kids and taking care of aging parents. We're not so much in that. Like our parents tend to age a little more healthy than
Hmm.
prior generations.
Right.
I'm not trying to
Absolutely.
get like I'm not trying to get like too like generationally like, this is only but there's not a lot of resources for millennial caregivers who are in that space, and it things do happen, and that's why I'm so glad you're doing what you do. And I don't know, do you there another resource that I feel like really lacks, I don't know if you would agree or disagree with this, but male caregivers. I feel like
Yes.
there's just not enough for them.
No, no. And that's the interesting thing is it's interesting. Females are, I don't know what it is about women and us just being, and okay, let's go back. Your girl's going to go back a little bit here. But there is this like expectation that the mom does everything. Like even though we've moved forward, in the 20th century and moving into the 21st century, that women are allowed to work and provide and be out. They don't have to be stuck at home. It's kind of more to the choice where we can choose, but there's still that undercloud of shame of whether you choose to be a working mom, guilt, shame around, oh, you're working from home and you're putting your kids in daycare, having family watch them all the time. But then there's also the shame for the mom who maybe decides to stay at home and take care of the family. So that was something that was really interesting when I started, because I've done both. I've been a working outside the home mom, and I've been a stay-at-home mom. And there's bad rap for either one, that you're not doing enough, or you're being a bad mom or a bad wife, either or for it, or you're not doing enough, whatever. um that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could get into. So I think I agree with you, definitely, for sure, for millennials, is that there is this new movement that needs to happen and shift, that life still happens, whether it was 2 generations ago when our grandparents were sandwiched with raising children and caring for parents in the home before nursing facilities and stuff really became a thing. Because now it's the choice of, do you take care of your parents at home and utilize home health or hospice, or can you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually handle that, or do you need to outsource to a long-term care facility? I've dealt with that situation personally with my own mom. When she passed away last year, my dad was her caregiver, and they utilized hospice and home health, and she died at home. That was what she wanted, and that's what my parents wanted. So now I'm living with my dad, so that way we're with him, so he's not alone, and I can have help. So, but if you're just by yourself, if you're not having the resource of even family, what do you do? And I think it's important to say that for millennial caregivers, hospice and home health resources are not just for your parents. If you're a younger caregiver and you're caring for, Sarah, this came to mind. I have a story I want to share with you really quick. As a CNA, I remember I had a case where I was helping a family that had kids that were about your age, and they had some issues, and the mom was a stay-at-home mom, and the husband worked outside the home, had a good job, and could provide for their family, and everything else. So, but they still used that source, because that resource of home health. So I was a home health aide. I would come in, and it wasn't necessarily the caregiving side that I was helping with. I was helping them with their housework, so they could be able to have time to do the medical procedures with their kids, and so they could have the time to keep up on when they need to give meds and things like that. And so then they didn't have to worry about the housework, but they had another body there to help. So if you're a millennial caregiver, a caregiver at all, there is no shame in utilizing hospice or home health. Now, obviously, and I want to touch on too, like even with hospice guys, hospice, when you go on hospice, it doesn't mean like it's for sure that your loved one is going to pass away like tomorrow. But there is a different variation of resources that you can tap into that's different with hospice compared to home health. Okay. So depending on your situation, it's good to look into both, because both can be healthy. Both do have similarities, like access to a nurse, access to a doctor, access to a social worker, access to counselor services. Because and that's not just for the person who's sick; it's for the family. When we lost my grandma, she was on a hospice program as well, and my sister used uh, the counselor quite a bit, because for her, it was just a lot for her to take in to see our grandmother pass away. And so it was just really helpful for her to be able to tap into that resource. So do your research. There's different programs, depending on, and different needs. So whether you need someone there I had cases, I remember, where I would just work 6 hours a day or 6 hours a week on one case. I went over for 2 hours, 3 times a week to help out with some light stuff. And then there was other cases like that one family I was talking about that I worked with, where I was there for a full 8 hours every day, 5 days a week, where I worked 40 hours just for that one family. So depending on your needs of what you're needing to tap into to outsource, because that's another thing, outsourcing. You can't do it all. You can't do it all. So what can you tap into? For us right now, that has been helpful for me is, prior to to us moving in here with my dad, my dad and mom had utilized some house cleaners. And when we moved in, my dad's like, listen, you're coming in to, be with me now that mom's gone, which I appreciate, but you're also caregiving for your spouse and you have a toddler. So I'm making the executive choice, like, I will keep paying for those house cleaning services and the yard service. We also have people that come and do our yard for us too, to take the load off. So, I still do help out with house cleaning, keeping the house clean throughout the week, but the deep cleaning stuff, we have someone that comes in and does it. And there's no shame in that. So that means I have more time to work on my business. I have more time to make sure my dad and my husband have whatever they need for their health. I have more time to take care of my own health and keep up with, and be a mom and play with my daughter and invest and work with her on her speech therapy. So there's no shame in outsourcing, and everybody's different. Some, it might be using Albertsons or Fred Meyer or Walmart and having your groceries delivered to your house every, being willing to pay the extra $5 to $10 to have your groceries delivered to you every 2 weeks. So that way you don't have to go outside the home and expose yourself. Especially if your spouse or child has a very compromised immune system, and that's just one way you want to stay safe. There's no shame in that. If you want to use home health or hospice, like I touched on, to help with the caregiving side, because there's just so much to do, and you need to outsource some of that with housework, or even actually doing ADLs or activities of daily living, so helping with dressing, meds, bathing. You can do that. There are options. But also too, I just want you to know that there's also the resources of us. Okay, there's the resources of us. We are here. We are living through what you're going through. And sometimes the thing that you need the most is just to have a conversation with someone, or even just vent to someone that says, if Sarah came to me and said, like, my kid just had a flare up with their illness, and now I'm waiting to hear back from the doctor about what they want to do. I get that. I get the agonizing feeling of, your loved one has a flare up with their illness. You do what you need to do in terms of triaging them, calling the doctor, giving them whatever medication that you're supposed to, and just monitoring and making notes and watching for new signs and symptoms, but then just waiting. You're in a waiting game to hear that phone call back from the doctor about, okay, this is what we want to do. Or is there anything that can be done? Do we need to do we need to be segue into that? Okay, they're not getting better, it's getting worse, and we do need to tap into hospice or home health, or we need to up the ante on a medication, or really try something out there because nothing else is working. We're out of options. I get that. I totally get that. And so if you need a safe place to vent for that, your girls gotcha. We have you. Okay. And so there is definitely merit in talking with other caregivers and being surrounded by other caregivers and being in support. So even if you don't So if you don't choose to us, look in your community to see if there is something. And there's not a lot, like we say, there still needs to be more, but there are churches, nonprofits that are starting support groups. You never know. Look at your community centers. Crazy as it sounds, look on Facebook. Like I said, the stuff I found was more segmented and it wasn't quite appropriate for me, but still look into that. Type in caregiver, caregiving for the caregiver side, for motherhood, stay-at-home mom, working from home mom, or motherhood. Facebook is full of a ton of different groups and support groups now. So you might find one that might be the right fit for you, and that is fine. And I want you, and I would rather, we would rather you tap into that sooner than later, because you can't navigate this alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add to that real quick. 211 is a national service. It's across the country, and they a lot of times can connect you with support groups in your area that you might not know about. So that's another resource that I just want to share. And they can also help families who are struggling with like heating assistance and SNAP benefits and things like that. So
yeah,
I share them a lot just because I know it's national, and I know it can help people who are struggling with, and they also have like a crisis helpline and things like that as well if you're in crisis. Hopefully, but again, use the resources before you get to that.
Yes, yeah.
Use
even
the resources before.
Right. Well, and then even there's just the since we're on the segue of resources, there even resources like just for the everyday. So like if you're tight on money, hey, we lost half our income when I transitioned. Okay, so we did tap into food stamps for a while. We tapped into do your homework though for the state you're in, or your region or country, for the programs that your country or state or region offers, to see what rules and what paperwork you need to do to submit to find out if you can apply, but still apply. So food stamps. Here locally where I live, there are churches that do offer rental assistance programs, funds, and food pantries. And there are some also clothing donation centers too that are faith-based and also nonprofits. So tap into those as well. Now, I know what happened with me though last year, what the problem was, 2 years ago, back in 2020. I can't believe we're in 2022. Anyway, but back in 2020, I did tap into all those. I tried tapping into a lot of those, but the problem was because of the pandemic, because people are out of work and could not pay their bills. Those systems were tapped out. Those resources were tapped out. But still, when you're in the thick of it, still do your research and see what is available online, because you still may be able to find something. And even if nothing else, you have information and you have a plan for things you can tap into later on again, if it comes back around that you need help in those areas. So rent. So again, like heating resources, like Sarah said, rent, food, and clothing. Those nonprofits can definitely help you with that. It may not be a lot. I mean, we're not talking about like with the food pantries that they can give you like 2 weeks worth of groceries, but if you just need a little bit, can help you get through to like that next payday, or that, or something, or when your SSD comes through or something. So it's worth tapping into.
Absolutely. I know that there's also like food share. I believe foodshare.org you can find where there's food drives in food pantries and stuff like that in your area. And also another tip I have, as far as like if it's food that you're looking like that you're struggling with, another tip I have is to have a party. All right, so this sounds crazy, but have a party and ask all of your guests to bring a large dish to share. You make one thing. Maybe you make spaghetti and meatballs, or just spaghetti. It's inexpensive. Ask one friend, can you bring meatballs for a lot of people? Can you bring bread? Can you bring salad? Whatever it is, ask everybody to bring, and then take what you can for leftovers. A lot of times your guests here, do you want it? I know that's it sounds crazy, but sometimes it's cheaper to buy a couple boxes of pasta, but then you get your whole meal, things like that. That's a funny story. That's what we did when we were in our early 20s and we were struggling with a newborn. We would have parties. Everybody would bring something, and we would take enough leftovers. We would always give people stuff back. We would take enough leftovers so we'd get by the week without having to buy too much groceries. Just the pasta boxes.
All right, and we go through that. Yeah,
And
sometimes
you can even do like leftover exchanges with neighbors if obviously if it's safe. If if you're medically compromised, you might not want to do that. But if it's safe, you might want to reach out to a friend and be like, okay, I'm gonna make, because sometimes making a large batch of something is less expensive than making single versions. So I'm gonna make this, and sometimes people get sick of their leftovers. So rather than food waste, do a leftover exchange.
Right.
Say, would you guys like to all make big batches and we'll exchange leftovers? Why not?
Yeah. And it makes it kind of fun because then it gives maybe your kids something new to try, especially if it's like an ethnic, like I know with our family, I mean, not right now, we don't have a lot of people that we swap meals with, but once in a while when we've had a chance to be blessed with a meal from someone who has a different ethnic background, that's been fun to try a different dish of like, oh, this is different and it's really good. Can we have more of it, please?
Yeah.
So it can be kind of a fun way. So like if you can't afford to eat out all the time, that can be kind of a fun way to try different things and be exposed to different things. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, and just kind of like contribute and help each other. It's really a good way to give back to each other because, sometimes when you feel like, how can I help the rest of the world when I'm drowning or struggling? Like how I want to give back. Caregivers tend to have this like natural, I want to give, but it's like my cup is empty. How can I help anyone else? I hate taking. I hate
It's that pride. We don't want to, we don't exactly. I totally get that. You don't want, we as caregivers and moms, we give, we don't like to receive.
Exactly. And I appreciate you recognizing that and like saying, even as a mom, just that mom guilt and that mom shame and that caregiver shame. And I feel like for men, it's even harder for them to ask for help.
Oh yeah, men will from even from the caregiving side. Okay, let's look at this. Look at it this way. My husband is a hard worker. Before he got sick, he was working 40-plus-hour work weeks. He was very, good about interacting with our daughter and playing with her, even when we'd be tired and come home from a shift and want to play with her. Very good about helping me help her out around the house. I mean, and driving, like all those things now have shifted. I pick up a lot of the slack for a lot of those now. And that's the thing with men. Men are fixers. They're providers. They're protectors. And so for men, when they get sick, think about it. Some of their masculinity and their pride gets taken away from them, which is devastating to them. My husband has to rely on me to watch our daughter a lot of the time, and he can't drive. And if he wants to do something, he has to have me take him, or my dad. So it's tough for men. Men are fixers and providers. And so for their persona, when they can't do something to provide and protect their family, that's devastating for them. Yeah. And as wives, and caregivers, that's where we need to be a little compassionate and go, listen, it's not your fault. You're still an amazing husband. Make sure that you're telling your significant other that even though they may not be able to do certain things in their, in your relationship and your daily life like they used to, tell them that you still appreciate what they do. Like my husband, okay, he doesn't work 40 hours a week anymore in terms of a traditional job, and he does collect disability, but he is still getting up every day and still trying to be the best husband, father that he can be, and son-in-law. And he also is still showing up to work even on days when he's just had a seizure and he feels like crap. And for some people would just choose to let that destroy them, let their illness say, okay, screw you. I'm just going to stay in bed. Woe is me. I don't care about anything anymore, and give up. He's chronically sick with something that he has to live with for the rest of his life. They never knows when it's going to hit. And he's still going to show up to be as best a husband and father he can. And like last week when he had a seizure, he was crying because he's like, I'm sorry, guys. He was telling his coworkers, I'm sorry, I don't want to let you guys down. He was more concerned about his coworkers and the impact of him leaving early from his shift than his own self. And that tells me that he's a dang hard worker and that he cares. And so as moms and wives, that we need to understand that women are different. We're give, and we're a little bit emotional, and it may seem like our men folk don't care as much. They really do. They actually do. They really want to be fixers and providers. So I can only understand from your husband's standpoint, Sarah, what it's like for him to not be able to fix and take away that issue from his children.
Yep. And
You
it's,
know,
and you know,
it's devastating when they
it
can't fix
is.
something. They can't just pull out their screwdriver and go, "Oh yeah, I can fix that."
Yep.
You know, or "Oh, I can." As a caregiver, it's like, yes, we have medical professionals helping me take care of my husband, but I can't. There's never going to be a cure. You know, there's no magic treatment that our doctor can give us right now that will cure it. All we can do is manage and cope. That's all we can do. We can try to cope with the systems and keep things in check to keep, because with seizures, for those of you who aren't familiar with epilepsy or seizure disorders, is that what's happening is your brain is shooting off extra signals that should not be there. So there's an average, like I read the statistic the other day, it was like 500, like the average, I can't remember what the average is, but what happens when you're having averagely with someone who has a seizure disorder, 500 extra signals are shooting off your brain, and those signals are causing damage. So like with my husband, for example, he has epilepsy. With him, he has epilepsy specifically, and he has left front temporal lobe damage. So in other words, so the front left temporal lobe of his brain has shrunk. And when that happens, that damage happens, it impacts not only your short-term memory, but it can impact your long-term memory. So that's why when he has seizures, he may not remember what happened prior to when he had a seizure. He may not even remember that he had a seizure. He just wakes up and he's like, what the heck happened? So, or he may not remember, or sometimes it'll show up in like, we'll be having a conversation and we'll be talking about something that happened earlier in the week. He may not remember it quite well. It's like, oh, don't you remember, honey? I told you. It's like, oh, that's right. So his memory does get affected from it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. There's so much that goes into caregiving and motherhood, whether it's caregiving for spouses, whether it's caregiving for your children with diseases like what your children are going through with autism and things like that, Sarah. It's a lot to take in. And I think there definitely needs to be more advocacy and programs for women like us and families like us nationwide. It's a nationwide, worldwide issue. And I think it can only get better if we're willing to share our story. And that's why it's so important. I think like what I teach with my prompt method, T is tell your story. It's good. It's not only good for healing, but there's power in voices and advocacy. So here we are on a podcast and we're talking and we're sharing our stories about what we've been through. So those of you who are listening know that you're less alone. You're doing the best you can. Nobody knows your family and your situation better than you do. And that you're allowed to give yourself grace on those hard days because they're going to come. I wish I could promise you that once you get your routine and kind of figure out what works, get into the ebb and flow and figure out what works for you, that's going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It doesn't happen like that. Yeah. So we're in the thick of it right now. My husband's been having a lot of cluster seizures, and we have a follow-up coming in. We just adjusted his meds again, and he's had some breakthrough seizures because of that, because his body hasn't had a chance to adjust to that. And I don't know if we're going to have to switch medications altogether, because medications for seizures, speaking to what I know with the situation I'm in, they do have a shelf life. They don't permanently control the seizures indefinitely. You do have to switch doses, and you do have to switch medications. Like the medication we're on right now is the third medication we've been on in our 2-year journey.
Yeah. And there's in like seizure medications, a lot of times you have to wean down before you can start the new one. And
that was crazy. Yeah. We went through that. So my husband's on the Zomethacin side right now, but when we got him out, once we figured out that Zomethacin was helping, he was also on a full dose of Keppra, and he was on a full dose of Lamictal. And that was insane. It was like I had to write out this really huge protocol to be able to keep track, because we can't wean all 3 drugs at the same time. Yeah. So what we did is we got him on we waited to make sure he was being pretty consistent with no breakthrough seizures on the Zomethacin, while he was still also on the Keppra and the Lamictal. Even though those 2 were the first 2 drugs that he blew through that did not work, they still offer some sort of protection. So you don't want to just stop cold turkey, because then you really have a can of worms that you don't want to open. So once he was stable on the Zomethacin, we did I think it was a weekly wean over like 4 to 6 weeks off the Keppra. And then with the Zomethacin, he was on it, but we weren't quite back on the right dose for that. we started weaning up the zomethazine and weaning down on the Lamictal. And it was crazy. And it wasn't just like across the board, the same dose every day. It would be an increase in the morning, a decrease in the night between the two drugs, and then the same thing at night. So, and that one was crazy. It got to the point where like we were like increasing like 100 milligrams of the zomethazine, and then we were like doing like just 25 increments every day, like either in the morning or at night, or both in the morning at night, you know. And that one was kind of rough because by then we were off the Caregiver, but it was kind of rough when we were weaning off the Lamictal, because when he'd have a breakthrough seizures, the doctor would be like, okay, that's okay, you know, we're still going to do it, and he can still do it, but we'd take a break for a week. We would just we'd increase the Lamictal dose back up for a week to let his body have a break and keep him on that dose of zomethazine that he was on. And then after a week, we would go back with the protocol, get back on track with where we were at in the protocol. And it was insane.
And again, though, you're fortunate to have that medical background to kind of understand this. I know in addition to being a nurse's aide, I was a medication aide for a good 12 years or so. So, you know, having that medication background with my children, medications, you know, new medications, weaning medications and things like that, I have a better understanding of what to look for like side effects. Is the medication working? Are they getting a therapeutic benefit from it? You know, and again, I want to go back into stigma, just again to reiterate this, because there's so much stigma around medication now, which I think is ridiculous because people need it to survive.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, if you're prescribed meds by a doctor, your body, and I love holistic health and natural treatment. I'm a huge fan of those. However, I do Reiki. I'm a Reiki master now, which I think is great because it's energy healing and it's calming and relaxing. But take your damn meds.
Right. Well, not just a little bit, because I have IBS and I have hypothyroidism. So yes, supplementing with diet does help my symptoms of fatigue, weight, you know, and exercise is huge. And gut, because I get a lot of, when you have hypothyroidism, for example, you can get a lot of gut issues anyway. And I had that before I got the IBS. But still, I can do all those things, getting enough sleep, getting enough hydration, nutrition. I still need to take medication because whether you have an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid, it doesn't work. For some reason, it quit working right. And for the rest of your life, you need that supplemental medication to keep it going, to keep it in check. Because even though the thyroid, for example, is a really small organ, there's a whole slew of other problems it can lead into. Okay. Depression being one of them. So, and mental health issues being one of them, and fatigue. So keeping those symptoms in check is critical, being able to feel good. And I'm actually going in this morning to recheck my labs because I ran out of medication because of my insurance and all the craziness that goes on with that. I haven't been on my medication for about 2 weeks and I felt like crap. So you need your medications. It's very important to take your medications, whether it's for anxiety or depression, whether it's for IBS or hypothyroidism like I have, or whether it's for epilepsy like my husband is. The medication is there because there's a part of your body, whatever the part of the body is that's not working properly, you need that medication. Yes, holistic health and treatment is good because it's natural, and that's the other thing I want to say too. Medications, even though they help a problem, they do have side effects and they can make you crummy. So it is important to also pay attention to that and communicate that with your doctor, because that's one thing I will say too. I want to touch on too, like with the Lamictal and the Caregiver, you know, depressive side effects can kind of come, but with the Lamictal, we noticed my husband's depressive mood got better. Because it's interesting, I have family that actually take Lamictal not for seizures but for depression. They figure out, and that was a byproduct because they when they first started using Lamictal as a seizure control drug, they realized they got a lot of feedback from people who were trying to treat their seizures, say, oh gosh, my mood's so much better. So that prompted them to like, let's do a deeper study on the benefits of using Lamictal as a depressive aid, right? And what do you know? It worked. You know, they found merit in it. So now they've, you know, been using Lamictal not only for just treating a seizure disorder disease, but they also treat it for depressive diseases too. So, so meds help. There's
Yes,
no
and
shame in taking your meds, but there's no shame
absolutely.
in holistic medicine either. So do a blend.
No.
So, and figuring out what your body needs. So like what works for me, for example, may not 100% work for Sarah, and that's okay. The whole idea that I want to get across here too about everything we've talked about today is that figuring out a self-care routine and a caregiving routine and a motherhood routine that works for you in the situation that you're in is the key to it all. Now, it's going to look different. Okay, what we teach and what we share, the idea is not to be 100% a copycat, because guess what? It won't work for you, because I've created my systems and figured out what tapped into what works for me, because that's what works for me and what makes sense to my brain. So the idea is of what we teach you and what resources we give you is we give you the information and the foundation. Then we want you to take it, process it, absorb it, and then tweak it into a way that makes sense to you, and then just run with it. And trial and error. Okay. In my 2-year caregiving routine, I've tried some things. In my business, I've tried things, and I'm in the process of revamping and trying some new things too. And that's okay. It's an evolutionary process of learning, implementation. Sorry, that's my landline phone. Sorry, guys. And everything else in between. So there's nothing wrong with trial and error. And it doesn't mean you're a bad mom if you try something and it flops. It doesn't mean you're a bad caregiver. It just simply means that you haven't found your groove yet. Okay. And if you get stuck, we're here. We're here to help you get unstuck. Okay. We're here to help you get unstuck.
Exactly. And that's such a great segue to my next question. What are your best self-care tactics for yourself?
Okay. I'm just going to go on a little tangent here. So
Go for it.
STEM. Okay. Spiritual reconnection, thought management, emotional release, and movement throughout the day. Those are the basics. So physical, mental, emotional, and physical self-care and spiritual self-care. Okay. So spiritual reconnection, whether you believe in God like I do, or you practice a different faith, if it's been a while, tap back into it. Spend some time in prayer and meditation, reconnect with your congregation of faith, or even just have maybe a one-on-one conversation with your leader of faith to get that support, because you need that. Because we all have those spiritual questions, of why did this happen to my family? Is God or my higher power, whatever I believe, punishing me? No, but you need that. You need to have that guidance to kind of process that. You have to process thought management. Okay. Are you in a place where just trying to rough it on your own is not enough? Where can you build your support network? So we're looking at talking with a counselor, talking with a therapist, maybe utilizing some referrals and resources that they have, or even journaling is a good way to just vent. Journaling has been so good for me, because there's something about writing and taking it from your brain onto the paper. And sometimes if you need to, you can swear or shout or vent at the paper. Okay. You have to release it, and you're releasing it at the journal and not your family. So that's important. And then we're looking at, let's see here. So thought management, emotional release. So again, support. Spiritual advisement is kind of tied in here too, but also support. This is the big one, where support groups and even just building your support network. So who is your backup if an emergency happens in your family or friends or your congregation of faith that can help with transportation, childcare, and also even just logistically, like we talked about at the beginning. What can you outsource? Is it online grocery haul? Is it utilizing hospice or home health to help with caregiving or housework duties? Is it also looking at yard care? Like I said, we have people that come and mow our yard for us. And they're just people in my dad's church that come and do it for us, and because they have a business. So tap into that. And then movement throughout the day. I get it. We're busy. We have a ton of stuff going on. Okay. There's a lot. I don't care. 15 minutes a day, whether I know for me, even 3 years into postpartum, I'm still struggling because of my IBS and my hypothyroidism to get back and have enough good days where I can exercise. So even just getting outside for a 15-minute walk is better than nothing, or setting a timer. I don't care. Put on some Spotify, YouTube, or something and dance to 3 songs in the living room with your kiddos and have a dance party. It's better than nothing. Or as the weather, or paying attention, I would say too, like I know one thing I'm looking forward to is we have a pool right next door to us, a community pool in our subdivision. I am really looking forward to doing laps in the pool this summer because with my specific diseases, especially my hypothyroidism, high impact exercise really aggravates my disease. It's not a good idea. So I can't do like hard cardio. So laps in the pool, walks, maybe yoga. I mean, I haven't tried it, but low impact things like that work better for me. So pay attention to your own body. If it's not a health condition like mine, maybe you have an back injury or a knee injury. So pay attention to things that you can do consistently to get that 15 minutes of movement in a day. And then overall, then you tie into, sorry, Sarah, I'm taking so much time here, but then, thank you, sweetie. But also then it ties into my prompt. So then so you got your self-care plan, but then we tie into your motherhood and caregiving routine. So preparing for the unexpected is your medical stuff, your medical binder, all in one spot where you can find it if there's an emergency. So preparing for the unexpected, reaching out for support. Are you going back into building your support network, coach or mentor, or a caregiver advocate like Sarah? Are you tapping into resources like that? Getting organized at home, 15-minute tasks, habit stacking. What do you need to do today? What can you outsource? So whether it's first thing in the morning doing your activities that if you don't do it now, it's not going to get done. For me, it's dishes and laundry. So if the laundry basket is 3/4 to all the way full, I do a load of laundry. For that, I do at least one load of laundry, because in the old day before my husband got sick, I would do a designated laundry day, but I can't guarantee that laundry day will happen on laundry day because of my husband's illness. You're with me on this. So I have to chip away at it. So what tasks, how can you break down your tasks and chip away at it throughout the week? Okay. And then we get into managing your schedule. So Google Calendar, paper calendar, what makes sense to your mind and your body and your brain in managing everything. For me, I don't like planners so much, but I love having a family calendar so we all know when appointments are going to hit, so we can coordinate like who can watch my daughter. And then Google Calendar. It's free. You can color code so I can keep all of our schedules separate, and you can custom alerts. For some people, it might be triggering. I understand having your phone go off, but I keep my phone on silent just so I don't trigger my husband or my daughter in case she's napping, or my dad. But I still get their alerts, and I like to do custom alerts a day in advance. So that way, for my brain, if I don't know what's coming up the next day in advance, I get stressed, because then it's like last minute, like, oh shoot, I forgot I had that appointment. No, if I know a day in advance, I'm all good. And then prioritizing your self-care. So just really high hardcore going into STEM, like I talked about before. And then the last one is telling your story. So you don't have to be a business owner like us and get on a social media platform or a podcast platform like we're on right now to share your story, but advocate, just share your story, because there is power in sharing our story. Because when we share our story, we create better awareness, and we move the needle forward on potentially getting better resources, better plans, or programs available across the country, and in our communities. But because people don't know what they don't know. If we're not saying, hey, you know what, we deal with this on a daily basis, there's nothing for us. You don't know what you don't know, right? So that's where Sarah and I are coming in. We'll be the advocates for you, but even you guys just coming to us and just sharing us, and then we have feedback to share it as well. That helps. Okay.
Absolutely.
But anyway,
Thank you.
okay, that was a mouthful more than I planned, Sarah, but
No, but I loved it though.
you
And
loved it. Good.
and I loved how you said, self-care is not one size fits all, and you put layers of self-care in there, and that I never thought about. Again, huge self-care advocate,
Right.
but layering self-care, I don't necessarily think about it that way. I think about it as, I'm going to do yoga today, which I never do. Every time every time I say I'm going to do it, I just don't.
Oh, that's
But I
funny.
have honestly, just burning an incense because I like the smell and it smells nice, calming for me. And sometimes that is my self-care. In the dance party, that's my movement self-care. That I'm telling everybody, get an Alexa device for your bathroom. If you have it nowhere else in the house,
I love it. I
have
love
one
it.
in your bathroom because number one, and again, task management. Help remind me to get shampoo next time I'm at Target. Um, Alexa, toothbrush timer for your kids. Plans for world domination, and of course your shower dance party. What,
Oh my gosh,
whatever
that's so funny. I hadn't thought about that. I love it.
music in the bathroom. I'm telling you, if you have one in your home, put it in your bathroom because that's when my best ideas happen when I'm in the shower because it's like my best alone time.
That's for anybody.
And that's also when I always forget it by the time I get out and get dressed. It's like, oh, I should write this idea down. It's great. And then
Well, no, Sarah, what you should do then, while in the start, Alexa, write down this idea.
exactly. Well, that's why I have it in there now for my all my plans for world domination. It's like this is just a simple self-care activity that you can do and squeeze in, and it covers those layers, and it's like, it was just so great to share that because I don't think about, you don't think about it. You don't
No,
think about the layers of self-care that you need in the spiritual self-care, the
absolutely.
meditation, whatever else. You don't think about those layers, but you do. You really do need all those layers.
Right? That's why 15-minute task. You've seen my Instagram. 15-minute tasks, daily tasks.
Yep.
15 minutes of self-care here. Okay. My water bottle's empty after this call. I'm going to go refill it and I'm going to take it with me to my medical appointment. Um, like I said, 15 minutes in the beginning of the evening. In the morning, it's getting the dishwasher unloaded, reloaded, starting that load of laundry. Those are my non-negotiables. That's what I do. In the evening time, it's same thing. Reverse. Tidying up the kitchen, prepping the coffee pot, emptying the trashes, folding that load of laundry. If I haven't gotten to it, that daily load of laundry, sweeping the floor. Like I said, we do have house cleaners, but still, we live here and we have
Well,
messes,
you
so cleaning up
you have
after
a
yourself.
toddler. You can't
Yeah,
have
it's
a
impossible with a toddler. I
there's
know.
yeah, you need your own personal housekeeper just for toddlers. Um,
Exactly.
I
But
actually
that's what
think all kids should just come with one, but they don't.
they don't. They don't. They
What a
don't.
disappointment.
Right. But this 15-minute habit stacking, guys. If you're taking the trash out, or if you need to go out through the garage to grab something, take the trash. Take the trash away. That's something I learned from another mom that's in my mastermind that I'm a part of. And so habit stacking is huge. I'm working on that. Um, Breaking it down again, 15-minute tasks. What is something, like I said, there's the non-negotiables for the 15 minutes, but what can be a weekly task that does take 15 minutes maybe, or you figure out a way to where it is a non-negotiable when, even if something happens, you have a backup way of being able to get it done. Or so house cleaning for us, deep cleaning, house cleaning, the same thing. Okay, so that's where our house cleaners come in. We get the house cleaned once a week, deep cleaned once a week for, excuse me, for our health. So that's one way we're doing it right now. So be creative. There's no right or wrong way. And again, if you try something and it flops, it doesn't mean you're a bad mom or caregiver. It just means you have not found your groove.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on and sharing that stuff with us. My final question for you, where can my audience find you?
Okay. I have a couple places that you can find your girl. Like Sarah attributed to, I'm on Instagram a lot. That's the main hub where I'm at right now. So my handle is at Melissa Miller 2011. I do daily reels over there. I'm pulling back on feed posts because things are crazy right now, but I do have a daily feed post that usually goes up so you can interact there. My DM box is open if you have questions. You can email me at melissamiller@tylersupermom.com. And also, if you're just interested in seeing all the stuff I have, my website is programs melissamiller2011.com. And I have a lot of ebooks over there, resources that are free and downloadables. I have some stuff for journaling and self-care. And and you can also get on the wait list for my big Finding Your Balance program. So it's an 11 module course. You get some free downloads. You get a month of one-on-one Voxer coaching. So you get one-on-one access to me for a month. I usually sell it for $279, but when you join, you will get 1 month of complimentary one-on-one coaching. So basically you can just pull out your phone, voice message me on Voxer anytime between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, or noon to 6 Eastern, as many times as you want, Monday through Friday in that time span. I will not respond over the weekend, and I will respond to your messages first thing Monday morning when we start again. But that is opening again on June 27th. So doors are closed right now, but you can get on the wait list and be notified for when I open up the doors again.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Again, all of your information will be in our show notes for our audience, so they can easily find that. I really loved having you on. It's so funny how many similarities we have. We were talking about that before the recording started, and
Right?
it's just like we're like almost twins. Like
I know. It's crazy. So
we have a lot of similarities, and I just love that. So Melissa, I'd love to have you back someday. If you ever want to come back, let me know.
Oh, I'd love to come back. If you ever, if there's certain topics, yeah, I definitely would love to address any, so those, okay, I'm just going to throw this out there if this is okay with you, Sarah. So for those of you listening, if you have any questions on certain topics that maybe we didn't cover that you have questions about, send Sarah an email or send me an email, and we'll do a part 2 if you'd like down the road to answer those questions. So so give us some feedback. DM us on Instagram would be a good way to get in touch with us.
Absolutely, and I would love that. So for those of you listening, you can find me at caregiverchroniclespod@gmail.com, Instagram, Caregiver Chronicles 2, Facebook, Caregiver Chronicles, Twitter, Caregiver Chron 1, and you can find us on all major podcasts. If you liked what was said in this interview, if you know somebody who needs to hear this or someone who could benefit, please share it with a friend. Give us a thumbs up, a rating, a review, and I appreciate it, and we'll see you all next week.